All right, I call this meeting of February 28th to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, got it. So I'll note that all board directors are here. We are missing one of our student reps, Kyle, with prior notice. I think that's it. Next is approval of the agenda for tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I move that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, February 20th, as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved as noted in the package. All right. And so at this point, I'll hand it over to Superintendent VanderYacht with some information for us.
Yeah, we just have 2 bullets of good news following our our snow breaks that we've had. The first one is a 4th grade partnership with the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association and Fisher Elementary School has brought not only a new batch of salmon eggs, but renewed school-wide excitement in the project. 4th grade classes will walk to Dickinson Park to release them into Fish Trap Creek once they are ready. The salmon project fascinates the entire school, sparking conversations among students, parents, teachers about the salmon life cycle. From TK to 5th grade, everyone eagerly follows the progress of fostering a shared sense of excitement and learning. I do believe these fish tanks are in each of our 3 elementary schools. Linden High School's performance of Hello Dolly opens tomorrow evening. Showtimes are February 21st and 22nd at 7 p.m., 23rd at 3 p.m., and then the 28th and March 1st at 7 p.m., and concludes March 2nd at 3 p.m. And so tickets are available at the door for $10 for adults, $5 for students. We're excited to see our talented students bring this beloved classic to life. And so I would encourage those in attendance and board directors to make plans to attend one of the shows. It is always pretty exceptional what high school aged students are able to accomplish when they work together.
That's right over here, right?
It's right over here.
Box seats for board directors?
Yeah, we've got a nice wooden seat for you.
Okay.
Very comfortable.
Okay.
Ask them for row F, number 14. F14.
Okay.
We got a spot for you.
All right.
Yeah, I'll just add, so my company, I don't mind saying, works with NC, Nooksack, and a great organization, work on Terrell Creek, and so that's great to hear that our 4th graders are working with them.
Danny, did you do that from Isom? Did you walk to the park? No, that was after you, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Ashley, did you guys get to go to City Park when you were elementary?
We planted the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
excellent. Yeah, great
That's great.
relationship.
Fantastic. All right, so on to meeting minutes from February 6th. The meeting minutes were included in your packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from February 6th.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from February 6th.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion, corrections?
Just one point.
Yep.
Do we know when we'll do the community services presentation again?
Oh, that's right, because we did postpone that.
It is scheduled. I do not know the date.
It is on our
I
schedule.
think it's either next meeting or the one after it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic. All right, so motion made, seconded, no further discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes from February 6th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved by voice vote. All right, so let's move on to the consent agenda for tonight, including AP payroll, personal recommendations, and some trip requests, and B, the one donation. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as included in your packet.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion made.
I'll second.
All right, motion made, seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question. There was something I saw online
Yeah.
about a call for Be the One Mentors, female, so is that, just wanted to ask. Is that true?
It's likely, it's likely that there is a need for mentors, continued need for mentors.
Okay, because it was a high number, so.
Yeah?
They seem to always need mentors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something. Is it Denny that you?
Denny and Nancy
Denny
and
and Nancy.
McHarness, and they have a high functioning website that would outline that. They have their application on there, when the orientations are for serving as a mentor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved by voice vote. All right, make sure I haven't lost my place. I don't have Kelly's script, but I'm doing okay. All right, information from the audience. At this point, those wishing to address the board should have signed up on the sheet as provided. Tonight's agenda items that may result in action being taken by the board is Resolution 0325, adoption of capital facilities plan and authorization to request impact fees. Speakers will be recognized by the board president. Each speaker will have a maximum of 5 minutes. And that's it. We have one signed up to speak tonight, and so is Doris Smith here. Sure.
Right. Well, I ran for school board, as you know, and I lost by 91 out of about 7,000 votes, as far as I know. So I represent about 50% of the voters. I would like to speak about some things that might, at the beginning, seem not to be relevant to education, but bear with me, I will get there. If you combine J.D. Vance's speech in Munich and the meeting between the U.S. and Russia in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, a momentous change in world history is now occurring, which is going to positively shape our lives, which hitherto before we could not imagine. At the Riyadh summit, Secretary of State Rubio, NSC Advisor Waltz, and Special Envoy Briskov met with their Russian counterparts, Lavrov, Ushakov, and another person. They are going to establish relations based on national interest and expand economic collaboration in mutual areas of mutual benefit. These two events and events to come signal the end of the globalist system of the anti-human policies against nations by the globalist empire's oligarchy. This ends the sacrifices of nations to the rules-based order which emerged after World War II as the merger of the U.S. with the British Empire, which is called our special relationship. The U.S. will no longer endure anti-nation globalist agendas. National interest will come first everywhere. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia barely escaped complete economic collapse in the 1990s. And today the USA is in the process of escaping the same. This will end the role of the European Union and NATO as the center of globalist power. It will also end the BRICS nations coming together as the opposite system to the globalist, which is the other version of globalism called the multipolar world order. Rather, as Trump has indicated in his recent meeting with Modi, it is the U.S., Russia, India, and China that can work together, not as a geopolitical bloc, but as interconnected national interests. Going into a sovereign nation-based system with the four powers, the U.S., China, Russia, India, will ultimately lead to a new financial architecture to benefit nations, which can replace whatever we have now. Nations will have to dramatically expand production for each other. Tariffs will initially be used to create trade balances as trade expands until some kind of a likely gold-based fixed exchange system is
I can't listen to this. This is abject nonsense. Let me know what she said.
This then creates a massive need for global expansion of production with trade beyond what the U.S. could currently command. To be able to do such requires dramatic internal structural changes in every area, from health to education to energy and manufacturing. This will profoundly affect Washington State. Given Washington State's resources, our port, our location...
Doris, I'm just gonna, you got one more minute?
Okay.
Just,
To fulfill the demands of national and international development, our region will have to take down the entire unsustainable ideologies of anti-development and climate change. We will have a desperate need for competent, skilled labor, trade schools, and massive job opportunities. And this is where it comes to, are we preparing our children to be that skilled labor force that's needed? Thank you.
thank you, Doris. Right,
President Verberg, I have a letter from a Linden Public Schools Foundation that wanted to provide to the board, and with your permission, I'd just like to read the letter.
sure.
That's okay. Dear Linden School Board, just over a year ago, a small group of like-minded citizens met to discuss how to best support the students and staff Just over a year ago, a small group of like-minded citizens met to discuss how to best support the students and staff of the Linden School District. These individuals became the founding members of the Linden Public Schools Foundation. As we enter 2025, it seems fitting to provide an update of the past progress and future goals of the Linden Public Schools Foundation. The Board of Directors consists of Debbie Vanderveen, President, Billy Van Zanten, Vice President, Bree Mayberry, Secretary, Ed Roddy, Treasurer, and Cindy Peterson as inaugural directors. In November, Steve Joke joined the Board of Directors for a 2-year term. The Linden Public Schools Foundation is a registered 501c3 nonprofit educational organization with articles of incorporation, bylaws, and IRS documentation. The foundation is a separate, fully independent organization from the Linden School District. The purpose of the Linden Public Schools Foundation is to provide resources that support and promote the educational needs in the Linden School District. As stated in our bylaws, the Linden Public Schools Foundation is dedicated to serving their mission in alignment with the Linden School District. The Linden Public Schools Foundation will raise and distribute funds to enhance education of each student and provide a means to develop the knowledge, skills, character necessary to lead a self-reliant, socially responsible life. The Linden Public Schools Foundation seeks to enrich the learning experience of all students in the Linden School District by supplementing local, state, and federal funding. Linden Public Schools Foundation is accepting financial donations. A majority of the first donated funds are earmarked to assist students and families through the Linden School District Family Community Services. Distribution of funds has begun. The Linden School Scholarship Foundation met with Linden Public Schools Foundation to discuss the merits of a partnership, and discussions continue. Additionally, the Whatcom Community Foundation will serve as a collaborating organization. Linden Public Schools Foundation developed and launched a website to explain the purpose and goals of the organization. You can find us at www.lindenschoolsfoundation.org. Our logo was designed by a Linden High School student. Fundraising will continue this spring with the first round of fundraising focused on seeking donations from individuals, businesses, and organizations. Funds will be distributed with the goal of removing barriers to students' education. We are excited about the future of this organization and its benefits to the students of Linden School District. Sincerely, Linden Public Schools Foundation, Debbie VanderYacht, President.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
It is 1, 2, 3, third to the last paragraph. The Linden Scholarship Foundation met with the Linden Public Schools Foundation. Different things?
Different things. That is another 501c3 nonprofit that manages and distributes scholarships to graduating seniors. So they distribute about $45,000 a year or so of scholarships to seniors.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Superintendent. Any other questions on the Linden Schools Foundation? Thank you for that update.
Nope. Thank
All right. On the item 7, information from board directors. At this point, I'll just open it up to the board directors, and I'll just do like I did last time. Start with our student rep, see if there's any updates you want to provide to us this week.
So yesterday, Kyle and I did our second student focus group. We got moved to the cafeteria due to WIDA testing, but we still
We're going to learn about WIDA testing now.
Oh, really?
That's great.
So this time we had a lot less students. It was kind of hard because we were expecting a lot more, but because yesterday we also had the elections for ASB officers and stuff, some students stayed in their classrooms to vote for that. So I guess it was just poor planning on our part. But we had a lot less students. We still got a lot more feedback. This time we focused on academics. Just asking, like, are your honors classes actually challenging you? Are your teachers giving you too much busy work? Do you feel like, just in general, how are you feeling in school? Which we got a lot of feedback about academics. Just most of the kids that we have there, they all agree, which is quite amazing to get just that many voices saying the same thing. I'm not going to say all, but most of the students that were there who did speak up, they said that teachers need to avoid unnecessary busy work. And it was just great. There was challenges in recalling information after tests, meaning after a test it kind of just goes out the window.
Of course.
And then teachers taking too long to go over test reviews, to the point where apparently there are some teachers taking a week on review and the kids kind of just give up after day 2.
Tell me about that. What does that mean? Like
So
test review?
Before a test, usually this happens in math.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher gives the kids a packet, or they go, it depends on the teacher, however they teach. I know my teacher, he gives us a packet. You have to finish the packet before the test. We had our test today. But my teacher, he spent, I think, 3 days max on the review, but apparently some other teachers spend a lot more time. And it's pretty much just a packet of what you learned in that unit. You fill it out, and you work your way through it. You work with your peers on it, so you guys can figure it out together, and then you go into the test. And the test can either be 1, 2, maybe 3 days long. Just depends on the unit. I think my longest test was 3 days, which was also something else we talked about. Then there was a lot of talk on the phone policy, which I know recently staff members have gotten together and have just said, see a phone, take a phone. But apparently there's been a lot of use of phones like after tests. Like if one kid gets done and has nothing else to do, they'll go on their phone and the teacher doesn't do anything. There was a lot of talk, just trying to go over my key points. The lunch lines, we have 2 lunch lines in the high school. Well, we have 3. We have one line that's like cold lunch, and then you can make your own sub sandwich. And that's kind of its own little area on the left side. And then on the right side, we have 2 lines where you can get whatever the meal is that day, and then you can get hamburger, pizza, whatever you want in the other line. And apparently there's just been a lot of cutting in line, and we're trying to figure out a way to fix that, because we already have David Kish out there, or Miss Rinker, trying to watch what goes on during that time. Mental health came up, how we would like to raise more awareness in the school for mental health, and people would like better communication throughout the school on mental health, just get the information out there. And then there were concerns over communication platforms like Parent Square and Student Square, which is how parents and students can get their messages from their teachers. Parent Square is for the parents, if you couldn't tell. That's kind of how teachers and parents can communicate about grades, attendance, etc., but apparently just not a lot of students use Student Square and aren't getting that information. We talked about people need to check their emails, and Kyle and I are working on something for, we might be building into our schedule time for students to check their emails to make sure they're getting all their information. We're not just talking about this all. Kyle and I are actually coming up with plans. Yeah. Any questions?
I do about the mental health. So I'm thinking about just like counselors and especially my oldest daughter when she started as a freshman. So when you say raise awareness about mental health, do kids feel like they don't have someone to talk to, or they're not going to their counselor, or?
The counselors, what I've heard from the majority of people I've talked to about the counselors are pretty much just there for schedules in college. And not a lot of the students I've talked to feel like they can go to their counselor, because their counselors are more focused on the other aspects rather than the mental health. We do have a mental health coordinator, which we're trying to bring more light to, because he kind of gets shoved in the dark, but he's amazing, Mr. Feigl. But yeah, just students don't feel safe to go to their counselors, and yeah, I mean, I go to Mr. Feigl when I have a problem, so.
And I'm sure you shared that with other kids.
Yeah. I always share what I've talked about, and when one counselor wasn't working for me, you can easily switch to another. You can just say, I prefer this one over the other one, and they'll work you into their schedule, which is great.
Thank you.
Actually, is the path, it's good, and we're trying to elevate student voice, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the goals at the high school. And is there a pathway that you're working with somebody at the school that can hear these things and respond to them? Has that been discussed?
Yeah, actually, apparently, Mr. Freeman sent out all of our notes to somebody, I don't know, but people are hearing about all this, and I've gotten a lot of feedback. I mean, you were there with Miss Schaefer, or was I?
Yeah, I was staying with Miss Schaefer, and
I'm not sure how things are getting communicated right now. It would be a great thing to answer with Kyle.
Yeah, maybe with Kyle and Mr. Freeman. Like,
Yeah.
I know he has an interest in elevating that student voice, but then it's got to get somewhere.
Yeah. So our initial plan was for student board reps to go in on a no student day and talk to the adults,
Oh, that's right.
but that ended up not working. I don't remember why. I did ask Freeman about it, but we're trying, I have a meeting with Freeman about this stuff tomorrow. Yeah, so.
To be continued.
To be continued. Another thing, we do have the blood drive at the high school tomorrow. And I know a lot of students, I'm donating, and a lot of my friends are as well. Yeah.
How much time did they tell
What
you
time?
you got to set aside for that? You remember?
Well, mine's at 8:30 in the morning. They say, I don't remember like how long it's gonna take, but they also tell you to like go eat their cookies for like 10-15 minutes afterwards.
Right.
So,
Blood sugar up. Yep.
yeah,
Drink lots of water.
drink lots of water. Yeah, I'm preparing myself.
Got this.
Yeah.
Is it your first time?
Yes. Yeah.
Ashley and Kyle and I are going to ESD,
Oh,
the
yeah.
ESD on March 7th.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
school day.
Okay.
So all the student reps from the ESD and the superintendents are going to spend a day down there with a workshop. And so this may be one of the things that we can answer.
Yeah, Kyle and I are super excited for that.
Well, that'll be good.
I got the email and I tried calling Kyle. He was in an appointment. And I texted him. I'm like, should we do this? He said, yeah. And so we messaged Kelly and she ended up getting us signed up. And then we answered the little form they sent us. So we're super
That's great.
excited to go.
Where is it?
The ESD, the Educational
Anacortes.
Service District, is in Anacortes.
It's in Anacortes, okay.
Yeah, we have to be
That's-
in Anacortes, I think, by 9 in the morning.
Great.
RESD, right? 189?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Mr. Feigl, if I'm pronouncing right, he's the one that has been hired through the county funds. The mental health coordinator?
Yeah,
I think
we
he
do.
presented at one time. Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With Mr. Feigl, we are planning to, Kyle and I are figuring out a way to bring more light to him and his work, because he is an amazing member of the staff.
And I've been involved with counselors do see students for
Yeah.
other
Yeah, they
needs,
do.
and I just want to share that. The perception of
Yeah.
that is real, though, right?
Yeah.
That they seem so busy, you can't go. You
Yeah.
know, all they do is the
Yeah.
college and readiness, and so
Yeah.
I think it's really good to try to elevate the
Yeah.
messaging around, because those counselors are looking for people to come to them and,
Yeah.
and go out there. And
Another
so
thing-
that'll be good feedback
Yeah.
for them.
Another thing that came up was, what do you need to do to go from like pre-AP English to AP Lang or AP Lit? And apparently, teachers don't talk about like which book, like you have to read these books over the summer, and your teachers are going to expect you to read these, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and a lot of kids fell behind this last year because they weren't told that. So I'm personally talking to the teachers about that myself, and I'm most likely going to get Freeman involved with that. So yeah, we are doing stuff about it.
Interesting, when my kids and I just had a conversation about the subject about counseling, and they said, now they're a couple years out, or in the one case, 6 years out of graduating, and they said the same thing. They felt, so it's not unique.
Yeah.
It's a very real concern that,
Yeah.
that the counselors are so busy that it's hard to really build a relationship. I think one of my kids said, I'm not going to tell my problems to somebody I hardly know. So it's understandable that that's how people are feeling.
Yeah, Mr. Feigl does a great job.
Yeah,
Doing this
they didn't
work.
have Mr. Feigl, unfortunately, but
We're lucky. Yeah, that's been around for a long time, at least ever since I've been in high school. It's kind of always been a topic students talk about, and so I'm really excited to try to help the mental awareness in the school.
Great.
Thank you for what you do. Really, it's been great to kind of hear the insights and feedback coming straight from the students.
I love
Appreciate it.
doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it up.
Yeah, I mean, you and Kyle are putting
Yeah.
some, a great amount of effort
Yeah,
into
Kyle-
this. That's great.
Yep.
Kyle does amazing work as well.
Appreciate it. All right. Director Hickman, anything to update on legislative
course.
tonight?
I love that Kelly actually asked for this information, so I'm like, I gotta make sure I'm writing this stuff down. So, Director Verberg followed up with Representative Timmons, Rule.
Rule, yeah.
And unfortunately, I won't, unless she can switch the date, I won't be available to talk to her, but we're following up with Timmons and Rule. I sent another 57 emails personalized to like Ways and Means and Appropriations Committee, and as well as following up with Timmons, Shoemake, and Rule regarding a resolution. And just talking with communicating with fellow board directors in our area, and just had a brief conversation with Ben Thomas. Poor guy came in on a Saturday just to follow up with some stuff, just about like federal government title funds, and just continue to track bill progress, and yeah.
It feels like, it sounded like maybe there was some good conversations had behind closed doors, but then in public, it feels like, almost like,
It's politics.
I would say that's true,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's
What
the
do you
name
wanna
of the
know?
game.
Drowsy?
well, I guess I just want a confirmation that what appears to me to be the case is the case, that maybe our reps pay lip service to our concerns, but then.
Sure. Yeah, and that's why the follow-up with those two specifically, because when we met with Sharon, it was like, oh, there was an understanding that she agreed with a lot of our statements, and but then goes to maybe vote a different way, and then follows up with even more verbiage that you're like, okay,
Yeah.
clearly you didn't hear what we had to say.
Yeah, okay. I guess I just want a confirmation that that was my sense. And
Yep.
okay.
I would second that. That's exactly what, I'm just, I was very disappointed when I saw that statement. I mean, I dealt with Senator Shoemake, and she's always, very gracious face to face, but to see that public statement it was disappointing.
I have a question for you guys. Can you guys provide, if you can, not necessarily now, maybe via email later, do you know if SB 5181, 5180, all of the bills that we're opposing in the resolution, do you guys know what's the status of those currently?
Yeah, so as of today, they're all the same. They're
Yeah.
just where they are. You typically, let's see.
They're in
You know,
committee.
and I hesitate to say, because there's lack of movement of what it looks like on a website, that they're dead.
Right.
I don't believe anything's dead, just
Right.
because of what happened last year. So 5181, it's obviously moved out of that, it's now in the House. 1296, still it says it's in the rules. And then 5181, it still says it's in committee. 5123 and its partner, 1855, still in Ways and Means. 5179, Ways and Means. 5187, Transportation, Ways and Means. 570, the 1699, it's in still
Kind of dead.
housing, yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so the one that, 1296,
1296.
that one is, you said it's in the Ways and Means, but did
No,
it
it's in
pass?
rules.
It's in rules.
Did it pass the other house yet? Oh,
No,
okay.
No,
only 5181.
So
It's got
just
it.
one of those has passed the vote?
But 5181 is its parent, like its partner.
It's
Right,
partner
right,
bill.
yeah.
They're competing. They'll have to resolve them within a gross bill. So 1296 is in rules. It's got a fiscal note, although I would say that the fiscal note's woefully inadequate, because it says it's only going to cost $100,000, but it's got to go to the
Maybe they forgot to add another zero or something.
Right, exactly. It's got to go to, after rules, it has to go to appropriations. It's got to go to, because it's got a fiscal note.
Right.
And so there's a possibly chance to engage there, and then it goes to the floor from there. So
Okay.
we're hoping that if we can meet with Representative Timmons and Rule next week, that we can at least, get their ear on it, but we'll see.
Right.
So that's the
Thank you
plan.
for providing that. It's just great for people like me who don't know that much in terms of, how it goes through each house, the
Yeah.
chambers. Then it, provides for an educational overview.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it looks like it's just 5-1, well, at least the ones that we posed, it's 5181 and 1296 that are just right now moving. The rest they're not dead, they're just not moving out of committee.
Okay.
Tomorrow might be a deadline.
Yeah, there's deadlines coming up. They have to get out of committee by a certain date, otherwise they don't.
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, yeah, I
Okay.
think, yep. Thanks, Dave, yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right. So
We're still on information. Even though that
Information.
felt like a legislative report. This is still.
this is still information. All right. Director Martinez, anything from you this
You
week?
know, I just wanted to, and I might be preaching to the choir here, I just want to remind us, and I got to say it out loud and say it for the record, that I think our priority needs to continue to be the Linden School District. I don't want to get so distracted by national rhetoric and everything else and forget about, I mean, just our kids. And I don't think that's a sentiment, but I think it's very easy to get other entities and organizations in our ears and get distracted from the work that needs to get done here. Something like, for example, class sizes and the amount of kids in a class. So we went to go visit a BVE on the 23rd of January, which is great. And one of the things I noted in a class I happened to go into was that there was 26 kids in this one classroom, and I think, well, gosh, that's a lot for this one class. I'm certain that we've got plans for it, and this is not, I mean, it's not about class sizes, but just something like that,
Yeah.
to me, is more of an important thing than, what's happening overseas or with President Trump or whatever, if that makes sense. So that's my soapbox, and I'll get off it now, but I do want to really stress that I think our focus needs to be on Linden more than anything else, so.
In the bills that we are following that we're for,
Yeah.
right, the big three, like those
Yeah.
carry equal amount of weight in our conversations.
Yep, this is not anything to do with what you said, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Director Barr, anything for this week?
Our focus on Linden. So, providing an update to the board and to the public, I guess, whoever. I'm going to be contacting and working with the agenda planning people for some of the policies that we've talked about. One was phone policy, so it's great to have those insights. Two is, I had the new one, shoot. Policy 3122P, it's a procedure. It's for the absences, excused and unexcused. So that's policy 3122. And then the third would be, I know I left you guys I'm working on the Connect Ed program. I think it's the right time, so I'm gonna be, giving all of my questions, thoughts, requests, and whatnot to the agenda planning. So I just wanted to apprise you guys of that.
And what committee is this, Director Farrar?
Oh, I think you just looking to get it on the agenda for a future meeting, is that what you're saying?
Our agenda, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Director Owsley, anything?
Yeah, I had a fun visit to Fisher as in my role as the director of the food bank, and they did a food drive, and they collected over 2,000 pounds of food, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I put together some numbers. I think it was over 7,000 pounds of food that the Linden School District through the holiday season, and then including what they did at Fisher here in February, that were collected and donated to the food bank, which is great. I think I did point out that Tasha deserves a raise, and Mr. Freeman needs to have a talking to, because I think he was at the bottom of the list.
I talked to him. He said he was focused on reading, writing, math, and skills training.
Okay, all right. Good job, Superintendent. But I that was fun. It was fun to go and collect the food, and I happened to be there at the transition and see all the kids going back and forth and chat with some teachers and things of that nature. So it's an interesting experience to be connected that way. I said when I took this job, I thought there were going to be some synergies. One of which has come up. I don't know if I've brought this up, but when Director Hickman and I visited the kitchen. Chatting with Narlene, find out she buys produce from an organization that I've been looking to buy produce from, but I can't buy enough to justify having it shipped here. Well, so she agreed to allow the food bank to buy produce in the quantities that we would buy it and have it delivered at the kitchen here, the district kitchen, so that we can go pick it up on Tuesdays. And so we've done that one time. and it happened to be a day that the schools were closed for snow, so it was a little awkward getting, Gnarling was gonna be there and all this other stuff, but it's a great partnership, I think that we'll continue to expand on, so.
Did you have to shovel out snow?
No, somebody had shoveled the snow over at Vospek, so I didn't have to do that. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of having these two roles that sort of have these overlaps, and it's a lot of fun. It's fun to show up at Fisher and have the principal at Fisher look at me and say, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm not here as a board director today, so just relax."
Did we have a meeting?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's cool that you did was it pounds that you listed for
Yeah.
the different schools? 'Cause that'll pay dividends in years ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm trying to generate a friendly rivalry between the
Yes.
public school district and the and LC. So
That's a great idea.
anyway, that's all I have.
Always know if it's by pounds, because then you get potatoes. If it's not by items, then you get the top ramen.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
that's what I've told people.
you
Canned
gotta-
goods,
Voice of
or
experience, right?
or it's a density question.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks. I love hearing that. Thanks for that. So yeah, I went to Unified Basketball
Yes.
last week, and I have to tell you, it was so awesome. Just hugely, and my daughter came with me. She loved it. It was at Nooksack Valley High School, and it was packed. We pulled up and it was just, that's what I loved. It's just, and the crowd was just into it and the kids were just, you could see the joy. It was just great. I just loved it. I can't say enough about it. Hope to get to another one soon. I'm not sure if there's any more left this week. but
Tonight.
Tonight. Oh,
is
tonight.
the-
I thought there
is
was
the
one.
last
Is the last one.
Yes, in
So, yeah.
a tournament.
Forgive my ignorance. What is unified basketball? And maybe some history or whatnot, so I can appreciate more.
So Unified Basketball falls under the WIA, and it also is connected to Special Olympics. So the Special Olympics, students with moderate to significant disabilities have an opportunity to participate in athletic or activities. And so Unified falls under WIA, and school districts put together, make commitments to unified teams. And it's a peer model where you have non-impacted students and impacted students playing together against other schools. Uniforms, we try to create an environment where the students come. It has been in other schools for longer than Linden. We have an alumni named Grant Brickbeeler who participated in the Special Olympics, and he was a strong proponent of Unified, and when I was hired as superintendent, I promised him I would get Unified in Linden, and so we are now in our second year of Unified, and we have a basketball team. It's co-ed, and then we have a soccer team. And so there's Unified track, there's Unified,
Okay, different
so
difference.
it can build as well. We have I think at least one student from Linden Christian, Meridian and Nooksack combined, just so they can have a full team, and it's the most beautiful sport. It's the beauty of sport encompassed in those events. It really is.
I didn't know what you were talking about until you have to go to one. I would encourage all of you if you have time, for sure.
I went to one last
Make time.
year.
Yes.
It was packed. June was packed.
So other students who compete in their regular categories, regular sports, can they also participate, or?
No, it's actually a sanctified WIA sport, and so you have to meet the requirements, and so you can't play two.
Okay.
And so these are the peers need to be non-basketball on the basketball teams. And so
I think when Director Bart, so they're kids with maybe some disabilities with kids without disabilities that are playing on the same team against another team, let's say from Bellingham. Yeah.
and so they're not necessarily playing with the boys basketball team. There's also a basketball team in the
Right. Another unified basketball team they play against.
they play against. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
I would like to also say we had some of our wrestling athletes go to state today.
Oh,
They
yeah.
left this morning.
That's right.
I haven't heard much about it. I have a lot of friends who are managers for the wrestling teams. but they all made it there safely.
That's good.
So, yeah,
Yeah, I
just
did
keep
read
your
about
ears
that.
out
Thank
for
you.
that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
How many students went to state?
I want to say
Is there
Four girls qualified, 4 boys qualified, and then there's some alternates.
Awesome.
So 8 students.
and they took quite a handful of kids down there, which everyone who was going on the trip, of course, was really excited.
It's
But yeah,
fantastic.
keep your ears out for that.
Thank you. Keep us updated, I guess, on what the results would be.
I will.
All right, so that gets us to item number 8 on the agenda. Board, do we have any board committee reports today?
Just legislative committee, but
Okay,
I
so
would
that
say
was it.
we're moving past that one.
Yep, so if it's okay, I think we'll move on to the next one. So next is, right,
I said efficiency.
efficiency.
I like it.
Yes, all right. Reports, so first is superintendent report.
Yeah, no reports there.
Okay.
The only report is in the teaching and learning, and we've been talking about bringing forward more of our academic achievement data. We're continuing to work on that at the executive level. We made a commitment to building level administrators coming before the board twice. Early in the year, talking about school improvement plans where they have identified student growth goals.
Yep.
They present those in the spring. They'll come back and present progress toward those goals or lack of progress toward those goals. Multilingual, program. We spent some time in a retreat, and so I asked Molly Mitchell, who's our Director of Human Resources Academic Services, to give us kind of an update. Because we're in an important window in terms of the assessment window, and so you've heard us talk about WIDA, so they're gonna give some overview a little bit of the WIDA assessment, and build some knowledge and understanding of board directors. I think that's what it is. And then Dr. Van Wyk and I are continuing to meet weekly, really trying to narrow in on literacy data in early childhood. We feel like we've got good TK kindergarten data, we've got good second grade. We're really trying to identify some key marks within our elementary, and hopefully the April retreat we'll be at a place where we can kind of make a recommendation. I think this would be a really key performance indicator for the board.
Fantastic. So we have Molly and Susie.
Yeah, and
I see Melissa's in the audience too.
Yes,
All right.
we've got the experts in the house, so.
Should we hit the right one there?
Yeah, I know, we get it on shopping channel. All right, so as David said, we promised to come and update you throughout the year about the progress of our work with multilingual learners. And tonight we're also going to feature information about the media, because we are in the media season, as you heard right now. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You'll already, I think, have a pretty good foundation based on some of our presentations in the fall, but we just want to build on that and give you more information to date. So we're going to do a little bit of a memory lane. Last summer in August, we worked with the principals and the executive team, and Abby Buchanan and Cassie Stevens from the ESD around UDL and MTSS, the two acronyms you've heard a lot. UDL is designing lessons so that all students have access, and MTSS is multi-tiered systems of support, so that idea that if they're not getting it in that first best teach, we have ways to intervene and make sure that students aren't left behind. So we were working on that, and that kind of aspirational goal of ensuring that in that first best teach in the classroom, that the instruction is 100% accessible. So all kids have some way of accessing the learning, and that it's 80% effective. Not all kids get it the first time, but if you could shoot for 80%, that's about where you want to be, sort of the sweet spot. What we learned so we've been working on MTSS and UDL over the last few years, and a couple of years now. And this year we made a decision to strategically focus on a population that we saw we saw was maybe falling behind. We needed to see more growth. And we decided to focus on our ML population. And the first assessment that we looked at together was the WIDA data from last year. And so the WIDA data is a good source of data for a snapshot because you can look at it from a district perspective, from a building perspective. You can look at grade levels, and you can look at individual student data. So again, it's one test that we take in February, right? So the year hasn't ended yet, but it gives us a snapshot that we can go back to year after year. And we together, the principals and the executive team started to think about what would be a good goal. A goal that we looked at that also coincidentally other districts are looking at because of the WIDA results from last year is that 100% of multilingual learners would progress by at least one level in their speaking proficiency. So I think we shared with you what we've seen is that we have some really good listeners that are students, but the speaking, their capacity to speak in the language of the disciplines and to articulate their ideas, we weren't seeing that same growth. And that's true of several districts in Whatcom County at the ESD 189. So this was a starting point, and then each building took that information, the WIDA data, the goal, and met with their teachers, met with their leadership teams, and started to finesse that goal to something that matched where they were at in buildings, because all buildings are in slightly different places and maybe have slightly different needs. And I just want to remind us, I think you did some work with this in the retreat, but WIDA isn't just a test. It is also, the consortium has online professional development. They'll actually come out to your site to do professional development. They have tools and resources to help teachers understand what language level students should be at as they progress. And the other piece that's important is that it's not just learning English language, it's actually learning academic English. So English that you would use for social purposes and instructional purposes. Can you read directions? Can you advocate for yourself? Can you, go to the library, check out a book? That's a form of English that students need in the academic setting. Then there's language arts, mathematics, science, social studies. So are students learning the language of the discipline? Are they able to articulate in the language of academics? And if we were to put this in perspective for you and in your positions as board members, I know I've watched over the last few years you acquiring language, right? For your specific role. So educational, legislative, legal, a lot of these rules of order, right? Those are all modes of language that you have had to maybe brush up on or learn in your role. And that's the same with students, right?
Right.
They're not just learning social English, they're learning English for academic and professional purposes, really. And just to think about, like, tonight when you came, did you think about what you're going to prioritize? Did you write a few things down to organize your thoughts? Did you practice or dialogue with anyone to prepare? Do you ever experience nerves or fear? Like this is all part of learning a language, right? And that's something that WIDA acknowledges, and that's something that we've been working at this year too, as we're thinking about how can we help our students better learn and articulate language. So again, I think we're giving you an idea of where WIDA fits into this. So there's this assessment that we take every year that helps us to track student learning. And it's part of a cycle of improvement. And I know we've had some conversations over the last few board meetings, like how do we measure growth? When does that happen? I guess I want you to think about learning as a cycle, right? We have a school year, but learning doesn't happen in a nice, neat year, and especially language learning. Kids they might go forward a bit, and then they might move backwards depending on what's going on with them, and going from middle school to high school, there might be a really big shift in what they have to learn language-wise. But in general, what we're sharing with you, what we've been sharing with you since September is that we looked at data. In this case, it was WIDA. We determined an area for growth, which was expressive language. We determined a building goal, so principals went back to their buildings, talked to teachers, talked to their leadership team. How does this apply to our building? Where are our students at? We discussed professional resources, professional development. Cassie Stevens has been working with the leadership teams at the building. We've had Shannon Sinclair come, who's a consultant that we use that's specific to learning language. And they've shared professional development with staff. Then teachers work together. They work really hard to meet the needs of all of their students. And part of their evaluation process is creating a goal for students called a student growth goal. So teachers would look at their classroom, their kids, determine who might need something specific, and they build a goal around that, and that becomes part of their evaluation process and is part of their learning and focus for the year. And now we're back at, at the end of the year, we'll come all the way back around to that WIDA assessment that the kids are taking now. You've been hearing about this from the principals as they came to share in the fall. ISA, this is just the next couple of slides are slides from the slide decks of the principals. So this is from ISA with Tim Doring. They made a goal for the building to increase speaking using formative and summative measures. So formative assessments are those ones you take in the moment to help determine your next moves as an instructor. And then summative is like, all right, how'd they do on this particular standard or content area? And then the teachers selected individual or small group engagement strategies to support the goal. So how are we going to measure it and what are we going to do? This was ISOM's goal. On the side there is part of the UDL framework.
Sorry, Molly, on that previous slide, the goal of increasing speaking using formative and summative measures, that's a goal for the teachers.
Yes, for the building. So ISOM collectively made a goal that all teachers would focus on this.
Focus on increasing the students speaking using formative. Okay.
Right. Well, they're using small group engagement strategies, and then they're measuring that with formative and summative measures.
But they're measuring the students' performance, not something that they're measuring of that the teachers are doing. Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll show you.
Can you go back one more slide, sorry? And so on the right, you mentioned UDLs, and those are the strategies that the teachers identified to use?
This is part of the framework under engagement, so they did spend time focused on this, but it would be things like, optimizing choice and autonomy. Kids there are many of ways that they can show their learning. If it's not writing, you don't need to write, because students speak. Could they draw a picture? Could they, right? Those are different. So there's a lot of strategies listed.
Thanks.
Okay. And in that building, one of the tools they're using for formative assessment is a rubric. I know. I actually gave you a copy. It's not, if you want a copy.
It's worse than the PowerPoint, Molly.
Sorry.
I don't have my reading glasses.
It's 95% accessible.
Maybe like 40%.
That's good.
It's worse than it is.
All right. So this is an example of the rubric. This is the rubric, but you can't read it. ISO that the teachers used to formatively assess student speaking. So I'll walk you through it. On the column on the left, those are the criteria. So vocabulary use, sentence structure, punctuation, comprehension, interaction, and participation. And on the row on the top is entering, emerging, developing, and expanding. So a teacher might have students think, pair, share. The kids are talking, and a teacher's going around listening to Susie and Molly speak. And it's like, wow, Molly's really articulate today. Man, she was not articulate 3 days ago. Right? I mean, maybe not a great example. But you get the idea. Like, they're tracking where kids are at, and then over time they can track progress. And this is an in-the-moment assessment. This isn't a once-a-year WIDA assessment, right? Teachers are able to think about student progress and chart student progress and share it with students, too. And teachers use a variety of tools like this all the time. This was just one that ISO agreed to use together, so that teachers could talk together, so that they could talk as a staff.
Actually, I have just a quick question, just because it was on the first page, but when you're asking if we ever have nerves and fear. So how is that addressed? Because I'm sure I shared this when we met that one Saturday, but how do you address these nerves for these kids who English is not their primary language?
I can start it with, do you want?
I can say that for the test, we practice. We
Oh,
practice
okay.
a lot with students, and we
Okay.
kind of give them an overview of what they're going to
Okay.
be experiencing when they take the assessment. And I think part of like what they are doing in the classes is to help, because if they practice during class, then it's going to be easier when it's time for them to do it during the test.
Thank you.
With practices really, and strategies. So for instance, I don't have BVE up there, but BVE is learning our writing strategy that helps students with internal dialogue around how they write.
Is that the gist statement?
Just, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And so it gives students the language tools that they basically learn to be able to think about how they might structure what they're going to say. So many of the things you probably use, like how am I going to say this? What's going to come first, next, last? Practice. WIDA talks about holding the floor, which is having kids practice speaking for a minute about a topic, right? And making sure that they're utilizing the academic vocabulary. So you're going to share with a neighbor about the science experiment. You're going to use these 5 words when you're speaking. Go, and then they switch. That would be a way to start to help kids feel more comfortable.
I think that question is what we want our professional educators wrestling with and sharing with one another on our Wednesday late arrivals. March 7th, 17th, we're getting together, professional development, these sentence stems, word walls, all these different ways in which we help students be able to access dialogue and discussion in those classrooms is part of what a growing profession works at.
When you visit classrooms, you'll notice word walls, you'll notice sentence stems on the walls, and that's just one way if a student is struggling. It's not just our multilingual learners. If students are struggling with the academic language and you have all of the words that they're currently using that might be really specific to a discipline, math or social studies on the wall, then a student can have a conversation and just have that prompt there.
It sounds a little bit kind of forced a little bit early on, like they use the same language. I'd like to stand on the shoulder of Mrs. Cartagena and share, and we give them all that part, practice that, and then they add on to that. I think of when Director Verberg was elected as president, we didn't know who the president was going to be. We created a script. We had all those starters with blanks.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know what I'm talking about, Tanya. Right? Same idea. Helps you feel comfortable, helps you lead the meeting. We do that in our learning environments as well.
This is just a question that I have. Do you guys take, so I'm certain that ISOM does awesome in certain areas with multilingual learning, and Fisher does awesome in others, and BVE, and so do you guys take all the schools and meet together and discuss, this was great, let's implement this in other schools, or is this more focused on individual schools? Because things like the GIST statement.
Right. Well, we actually have, and I'd say last year was I feel maybe one can range, but I felt like it was one of the first times where there was real, like, there was authentic sharing happening in the room every spring. We bring together LEA reps and teachers and administrators, and we talk about planning PD for the next year. And that's led by Dr. Van Wyk, but last year was really, felt like there was some synergy, and people were sharing what they had done. We get the principals together and they share. So at ELT, we're often sharing what happened, what they've been doing, and we have folders where we ask them to put artifacts and share their slides so that we can all kind of take from, share the good ideas.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
Having our coordinators has been really really helped with facilitating and just moving ideas from one building to the next. But there's, the big, one of the barriers is time, right? Teachers are so busy. When do you have the time to bring them together? and to share the ideas. Because our teachers do a phenomenal job. And from classroom to classroom, it might look a little different. We have our Wednesday mornings, and that's time when they share strategies and work together as grade level teams. I'm trying to think of other times when we collaborate.
Yeah, historically, I think some of the autonomy that we've had in our buildings has limited the growth of our professionals, but it's that absence of time being able to bring them together. And so by really coordinating landing on MTSS and UDL and focusing on a subpopulation allows groups to come together and have that common professional development.
Another really, I'm really excited for the March 17th Labor Day, which will be a workshop model, and that's something that LEA has been kind of nudging and asking for, and we've come together and put that together. And Dr. Vinlock's been pretty pivotal in making that happen, and so it's a collection of some experts from the outside and experts from our staff, and they're sharing their knowledge and insights and strategies around engagement, around supporting students that might struggle. So we've got basically creating a catalog of workshops. Will be 2 sessions and a keynote speaker.
That's similar to what you experienced at the conference with board directors. We put out a call for presenters among our teachers, and then people will sign up and be able to attend those.
Oh, that would be good. So is that a teacher workshop day?
Yeah. And put some parameters within the district goals of engagement.
All right.
Teachers, they trust other teachers, and they learn oftentimes best from other teachers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So LMS was another example. You may have seen this goal to increase structured dialogue, student discourse with academic language, and engagement in classrooms. And when the principals come back again to share out, you'll hear their progress towards these goals. And the middle school is using several different data sources to track student progress. STAR data that they give 3 times a year, and teachers can give more frequently if they'd like. WIDA data and ML data, that was at the beginning of the year, so they were looking at their class, how their students had done last year in WIDA. And then classroom data, so how are teachers forming the data session. And then the middle school just this year started using interim tests from the SBAR, which is the state test. So they're using a few different ways to measure student progress. And the professional development that we've been able, I already mentioned Cassie and Abby from the ESD that have been really integrated with our buildings and with our leadership team. And then we have a great resource in Heidi Lamar, who is our ML expert at the ESD. And she has put together a number, she helps support us, I can call her at any time and ask her questions about what we're doing, and then she also put together from the beginning of the year on these workshops from 3:45 to 5, and we have probably 8 teachers that have attended regularly, but some you can also drop in on sessions. So depending on the topic, we've seen more people sign up. The topic, how to get students to talk more, was really fun. So just trying to utilize all the resources to give teachers more tools.
Do you guys ever record those?
I think they are recorded.
I'm just not for me, because I don't
Yeah.
know if I'd benefit from that, but I'm just thinking of for others who
Yeah, that's a great
maybe
question.
would like to watch later.
When I miss one, I ask her for the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
The recording would be great.
Yeah.
So again, that cycle of improvement, we kind of walk through all of the phases of that. All right.
Sweet a time.
Susie is entrenched in, and Melissa. Melissa, do you want to share a little bit about what's happening right now in our building?
Well, right now we're, district-wide, we're testing 484 students. So all the buildings are right now in the process of administering this assessment. And then as you remember, the assessment consists of 4 domains. It's listening and reading, And then from there, we go on to the writing and speaking. We thought that we'd add a little note here of certain things that are part of the format of the test. There's a narrator that tells the prompts that the students are going to use to answer their questions. And then there's a character voice, Nina, and she plays the student in the prompts, and she is the model student that then gives an example of how a proficient speaking student might answer the question. And then our students then pay attention to that and try to answer in the same manner using the academic language. Students do have paper and pencil to take notes so that they can then form their ideas before they answer their questions. And then the accuracy, like if they are asked to talk about the hypotheses of the science experiment, it doesn't have to be accurate or correct. The student just needs to make sure that they're using the academic language to answer the question.
Can I ask you a question? So I spent about 20 or 30 minutes doing a practice WIDA test a couple of weeks ago, and it was very much, the content was science. Is it always science? Okay.
No, it can be social studies, it can be mathematics.
Okay.
Yeah, it changes. So you don't know what
Okay.
topic or what subject you're going to be looking at
Yeah.
when you're doing the test.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Individual kids at a computer with a headphone, first grade through 12th grade.
Yes, the kindergarten test is administered one-on-one, and it's all answered on a test booklet. The first through third grade, the writing is on a test booklet. Otherwise, everything else is done in the computer and answered in the computer.
Interesting. So, question, so the subjects can change, but this is a benchmarking exercise primarily, right? So if a child takes a test on social studies, do they do the same, or do the subjects switch? And if so, how do you benchmark if you're switching subjects around? I'm curious about that. Is there a protocol for that?
Well, you're focused on the academic language.
Okay.
So you're focused, and we're actually going to take you into
You're going to
WIDA
experience
practice
it.
test.
Oh,
And
all right.
so you'll see that, just notice how Nina, the model student, responds. And you can imagine responding in that same way with social
Okay.
studies or math.
Okay.
Right? So you're really focused on, because they're supposed to be proficient in all of those academic areas, right?
Right.
And we're not scoring these.
No,
The
there's-
WIDA
The WIDA, right.
consortium scoring.
Right.
They're spitting out a
Yeah.
score for each student.
Right.
We're then identifying whether that student's making adequate progress.
But
Okay.
it's a great question, and that's that piece around like how, making sure, I think, at one point we've been asked about the SBOT, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I wouldn't want it put out there without some explanation.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the WIDA.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it's a snapshot, but it's, I always love it when I compare it.
I love that you mentioned it's just a snapshot. I was actually just replied to we get emails sometimes, and so someone had, again, you bring up the SBOS scores and how horribly our schools are doing, and,
Right.
and this and that, and so it is good to have an understanding, especially even within the context of WIDA,
Yeah,
that this is just a snapshot of
right.
this in the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to go into an online sample so that you can just really sort of experience what our kids will experience. We're going to do 4th and 5th grade. Remember, speaking is our goal across the district. So
4th and 5th grade.
That expressive language, 4th and 5th grade.
Okay.
We're going to explore rock candy. I have to do a little recording. Hello? Hello? Okay, so we're going to begin the test.
Rock candy investigation. Now we are going to talk about a science project. Mrs. Green's class is learning what happens when sugar dissolves in water. This picture shows the materials the class will use. The class needs 2 cups of water and 4 cups of sugar. They also need ice, a pot, jars, pencils, string, and a hot plate. The students want to see what will happen when they combine sugar with water at different temperatures. First, Mrs. Green stirs half the sugar into ice-cold water and half the sugar into boiling hot water. She pours each sugar mixture into a separate jar. Next, the students hang a screw tied to the middle of a pencil in each sugar mixture. They leave the jars untouched and observe the changes. Look at day 1. In the cold water mixture, only a small amount of the sugar dissolved or mixed evenly with the water. Most of the sugar settled at the bottom of the jar. However, in the hot water mixture, the sugar completely dissolved in the water, creating a sugar-water solution. Now look at day 10. In the cold water mixture, the ice melted. Some of the water evaporated, which means the water changed from a liquid into a gas. But the sugar remained at the bottom of the jar. In the hot water mixture, about half of the water evaporated. The sugar has started to form solid sugar crystals around the screw and the string. Nina, make a hypothesis or a scientific prediction about what you think will happen to the cold water mixture by day 24.
My hypothesis is that more of the water will evaporate from the jar by day 24, but the sugar will still be at the bottom.
Now it's your turn. Make a hypothesis or a scientific prediction about what you think will happen to the hot water mixture by day 24.
I'm nervous. I think the water will, my hypothesis is I think the water will evaporate and there will be crystals on the string.
Now let's talk about the results of the investigation. In the cold water mixture, some of the water evaporated by day 24, but the sugar remained at the bottom of the jar. In the hot water mixture, however, all of the water evaporated from the jar by day 24. The sugar that had dissolved in the hot water was left behind. Some of it collected on the string and the screw to make sugar crystals called rock candy. In this investigation, more sugar dissolved in boiling hot water than in ice-cold water. The heat energy in the hot water affected the interaction of the water and the sugar, allowing more sugar to dissolve. Nina, explain to me, step by step, how the cold water mixture changed from day 1 to day 24, and how the temperature of the water affected the results.
On day 1, most of the sugar settled at the bottom of the jar. By day 10, all of the ice had melted, but the sugar was still at the bottom of the jar. Finally, on day 24, some of the water had evaporated from the jar, but the sugar stayed at the bottom. The temperature of the water affected how much sugar could dissolve. Since the temperature was so cold when the sugar and water were combined, only a small amount of sugar dissolved.
Now it's your turn. Explain to me, step by step, how the hot water mixture changed from day 1 to day 24 and how the temperature of the water affected their results.
Okay, anybody like to try? That's the end. So we're going to get the PowerPoint for a minute.
Can I, so,
Yeah.
so that test, I was gonna ask you about this first, because when I did it, it was, I think it was reading, I didn't do that particular test. Does the system then analyze that spoken word of the student and say, did they understand what they had seen? And they were able, so that the computer does that?
Not necessarily the science understanding. Did
No.
they use words like
Did they use
finally and
words?
then?
Right,
Did they
right.
string those things together and they then score them based on that standard of what a fourth grade proficient English speaker?
It's like using
Right,
a word
that's
like
what I meant,
hypothesis
yeah, yeah.
or a
Right.
scientific
Right.
prediction.
Right. So I think about the strategies that they're learning at BBE, and it's like, all right, I get that. It's first, next, then, last. Okay, what are the words they used repeatedly? What did it mean to say? But there's a lot of strategies in this. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that the answer of the hypothesis doesn't have to be correct, but the language that you use is what
Right,
you're
right.
listening.
But it's the computer that somehow analyzes that, or does somebody listen to
There's
it?
a person listening to all these answers.
Okay.
And they're the scorers for these.
I see, okay, okay,
Someone at WIDA that does this.
got it.
Okay.
So
How
not
long does that
AI or
take?
something like that, but actually a person.
It's a person, yeah.
AI might actually be more accurate. I'm just saying.
You're a fan.
How long does that take then for the results then to come back to you if somebody's listening to all that?
We'll get them in.
May 19th.
Oh, May 19th, that's my birthday.
So
In
testing now.
case you wanted to get something.
We will get the results.
And you see too that,
Happy birthday, WIDA results.
listening's part of this and reading's part of this, and so your students are on this continuum of being able to understand English and also to be able to read English, but then they're also being scored on speaking, and I think how challenging that would be, and so, and again, this one, there's 3 tiers in which they test on, and so if they are a little bit lower in their English proficiency,
It's pre-A, and then A, and BC is the highest tier that they can test.
We did BC, is that right? Okay.
That's what we just
Okay.
watched was the speed of BC.
That was one of my other questions, is there a level for people that don't understand? Who are in 5th grade, but test really low on the WIDA score. And,
yeah, you'll
you
see
know
that.
you know what I mean? So,
You'll see that progress
isn't the goal to
chart,
get them
it'll
out
show
in
the
6
whole
years?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That they're able to be, okay, yeah, so.
When I did
They're
the,
emerging English language learners, but they're in fifth grade, so they're gonna take a pre-A. Yeah.
Okay, that's good, okay, thank you.
when I did the practice test, earlier I said, remember, I said it was weird. I couldn't quite remember why I thought it was weird, but watching it, I remembered. When I did it, I thought, wait, am I taking a science test or am I taking a language test?
Right.
So do the students get confused by that? Do they think, wait, am I supposed to get the answer to this rock candy question right?
No,
Do they?
we try to explain before the test, well, at least at the secondary level we do. I'm not sure how the elementary schools, what the conversation looks like for the younger students. But at the secondary level, we make it a point to have the, kind of like what we're having the conversation here, we have with the students, just to say, look, this is to show your growth, so it can help us help you in your classes. And you don't have to be correct about what you think the answer is, but make sure that you are using the vocabulary that
Okay,
you're needing.
okay, good. All right, interesting.
And what we hope is that students are speaking like this in class throughout the year, right? So in science class, they are, or STEAM class, they are sharing their hypothesis, they're using that language, they're, that they get that opportunity to speak. Because that's really such an important part of learning language.
Here we have a couple of interesting facts also about the test. So when the students are taking the test, the prompts that they listen to, they can only be listened to once. So they have to really be focused about the information that they're given. And they can only record their response one time. And so That
pressure.
is,
I do my
Yeah.
voicemail like 5 times.
yeah.
Right, I know, I was thinking the same thing, right? Yeah.
So I used to do the recording for Bosbeck and for the middle school too, and it was like, nope, delete.
Yeah.
Try it again. Nope.
Right.
So to do
Right.
this in one try, I can't even imagine.
Right.
Like,
Is there a time limit? Like you have 30 seconds to answer.
no.
So, okay.
It does have a time limit. I'm not even sure how, nobody has ever run
Okay,
out of time.
okay.
But there is a.
I'm just wondering if there's a running countdown, like that's just
So maybe,
shack up the anxiety.
so could you go, well, scratch that, I'm gonna, right, and then keep right.
Yeah, exactly.
But if they were to run out of time, they get scored on what they answered.
I see.
before they
Okay.
ran out of time.
Okay.
Okay,
Not that they, yeah. But it's,
Wow.
it's stressful.
Here's a technical question, more logistical. I'm pretty sure I know the answer because before you start the test, you have to make sure that your microphone, headphone, whatever is working, right? So it's not like you're testing the whole thing and then they get no audio. Okay.
No, they get to test their mic first.
Okay.
They get to record. I think they get asked like 2 or 3 questions to make sure that it's working properly, and then they start the test with, I believe it's 3 practice questions, 3 practice prompts, and then they start
Oh,
the
neat.
actual
Good.
test.
Yeah.
And that third bullet kind of speaks to that a little bit, that can happen sometimes too.
Yes, where there have been students that will pass the state language arts test, but not WIDA.
No, I was just talking about the other one right above it,
Oh.
where if they hit that arrow to go next,
Oh,
they can't
I
go
was-
back,
yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that one's surprising to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, they can't go back
It's interesting.
and mark their answers as to go back and make sure, no. Once they click next, they've answered.
It happens a lot in the SBA too, is that there's little sessions, and if you don't click the right button on your test, and then we try to waiver to the state, and they say, no, you gotta move on, and so you have this kid who doesn't have any scores recorded, oh, Ashley's nodding over there. And so, yeah, I mean, you're dealing with 2,000 first through
yeah.
other graders.
These 2 down here, just a little bit, yeah. And they do walk students through their current scores just so that they understand where they're at, because it could be, just try a little right there.
That's good.
And then they get scored from 6 levels, from entering, then emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and the ultimate goal is to be whether it's bridging or reaching. Results will be available to us May 19th, but we will not get the actual students, individual student score reports until, I believe it's beginning of June, mid-June. But we will have access to the scores May 19th.
What's ELT stand for?
This is an executive leadership team, so it's, we'll get together with the
Educational.
executive team.
Educational.
Thank you. And the principals will get together to look at the data before.
So it's admin and principals to look at WIDA. Okay.
14 of us.
And then we'll see it after that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
This is the roster that we introduced to you. This is how we keep track of any student. We add the scores for the year, and any student that withdraws or enrolls is added to the roster. That is maintainable. This one here, when Molly talks about it being like a broad,
It's not just a straight line.
Yeah.
The students can grow, they can,
Right.
right? And it's a puzzle. Every student is a puzzle.
And so sometimes when you look at scores, it's kind of puzzling. And I think it's really interesting when students see their scores and they realize like, what, I'm not a 2. Like, you're not a 2. I bet you're better than a 2, but why are you showing me a 2? Like, focus. When you're testing, like, no, I have to be better than a 2 this time around. And so it helps when they get to see, but it's also interesting when we see and we compare year to year, because it's not always it doesn't always show growth. Sometimes they go back and it's like, okay, well, what was going on? I try to write notes for myself when the students are testing, like so-and-so was having an update, or just so that I can then look back to those notes when I'm looking at the scores for the high school. Like, okay, I remember him going through something, and I have something to refer back, because it's not always like that. Like, there's a reason why that student didn't test to show growth.
Does the standard change for this student? Would the standard have changed from one year to the next because he's gotten older? Yeah, so it would be. So it might be a harder test. He may not have really progressed as much in a year. Okay.
And we have students, right, Melissa, that will tell us, like, I think I'm learning and I think I'm better. Why am I not showing that or exiting? Because I feel like I should be.
That could be
But
discouraging.
they don't realize, like, it's growing with them. It's
Right.
not like they're testing the same way that they were the year before.
What do you think is the percentage of students who are participating in WIDA testing who feel that way, do you think? Do you have any sense of that?
I would say it's like, even the emerging students sometimes feel that.
I think at the secondary level, like I've been meeting with every single middle schooler who's taking the test.
Okay.
And many of them are long-term English learners.
Mm-hmm.
And I share with them, middle school's your time to be reaching that level, because it's that 5 to 7 years of gaining proficiency. So I think secondary students are asking themselves that question, and they're tuning in a little more, like, yeah, why am I doing this every year? But I'll say some are also very self-reflective. And this past week with me saying, oh, I remember this last year. I remember goofing off. Or I remember not trying very hard. Like a particular 7th grade boy is in my mind who really worked hard yesterday to the point where he had to take a break because he couldn't catch his breath during the speaking, because he remembered kind of being the goof off in 6th grade.
I see. Interesting.
He saw his scores and was like, what?
Yeah.
So I really hope he sees growth.
Yeah.
Because he worked really hard this week on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But that's a great
fantastic.
question, because really I think students, particularly once you get to the secondary level, they should know their scores and understand that. But I would hope they could make a connection with what they're experiencing every day in their classrooms. And that's what they can really see their growth in, not just...
Yeah, I'm very concerned about those test scores, because there's just so much conversation out there about test scores versus how much we spend and how our school's really doing, and they're failing our kids and all this other stuff, which I'm sensitive to. But then when I hear somebody say, when I hear you say, like here's a student, I know you're better than a 2, then it really makes me concerned about the analysis that we're doing on those scores. So, you know what I mean?
I would say though that when Susie says that to a student, that student knows that Susie knows that student really well.
Sure.
It's like Mama Cartagena saying like, dude,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So but I do see what you're saying, and that's why it's like the context of a test. And we're spending a lot of time tonight talking about a test.
Yeah, that's
right.
And what we really want to focus in on is that this is a cycle of improvement.
Right.
Right? We want kids to be experiencing, to be speaking, to be thinking about the language of the discipline every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, as adults, right, we pay attention when people are using the language that is appropriate in the context.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want our kids to develop. This is one of the ways we test it. It's not an easy test, right? But there's other ways that we're testing, like the rubric at ISO, or like the way that the middle school is using multiple measures. And teachers every day are informally and formally assessing students, but we really want the focus to be like, can they articulate?
Yeah. What is sorry to ask so many questions, but remind me the number of students who are in sort of in the program, if you will. Oh, see?
44.
Perfect.
Okay, should I just skip by that?
No, that doesn't answer that question,
No.
so go ahead and,
We have 485
For you, yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember the number. So close to 500 students out of 40, what's our total? 4,200?
3,500.
3,500, right?
Oh, 3,500 total. So that's, I'm no good at math, but that's more than 10%.
Yeah, I think it was 12.3 at one time.
Okay,
14.8.
No?
yeah.
Nice.
It's like, I'm gonna bring this just in case they ask me questions.
So that's a fairly significant population of students that are, I don't want to say struggling, but are having to have some sort of secondary learning in order to do the primary learning, which has a huge impact, right?
I will
Language learners.
piggyback off that and say that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for people like you, Susie, and you, Melissa, and Molly, and all the others who support this. And so that's why I think that continuing to hire people that can invest in multilingual learning is essential.
I would just add to that, Ken, some of these students, right, they are having to work doubly hard, right? Learning
Yeah.
content and language at the same time. I have been sharing this year my message to the middle schoolers that I've been proctoring the test with. I said, you have a superpower of being multilingual. And this is an opportunity for you to show your growth in English. But I think it's really a message we're trying to share with our students who know more than just English. Like, that is a superpower. That is an incredible asset and strength. And so trying to have that be the message and that you're showing growth. And yes, as teachers, we can look and go, ooh, that's where we're going to zone in, but really trying to, for the kids, like, that they see this as a...
My comments aren't meant to be critical, more meant to be supportive, because it's that's a monumental lift to have to sort of do that double duty, I guess.
Yes, I totally hear you saying that, and that it's appreciated that there's an awareness for some of our students that's, that they do a steep climb every day, every week, and and that there's people that work with them that understand that and can meet them in that unique learning is, it's good to have the support.
So one of the, I think your key performance indicator, one of them is around the WIDA and making growth on the WIDA. And when we come back with those WIDA results, we can look at that, dig in again, district level, and then probably all the way down again to the student level, just to remind us that we're talking about individual students on a journey, a growth, path of growth. Is there anything you'd like to share about that? We did actually put in your packet we did staple at the end, and you've seen this before, I think you saw this at the retreat.
Yeah.
But that idea of expected progress.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Trying to kind of keep the information we share just fresh.
That's good. How many students sort of test out? Do you have a lot of students that sort of test out before they graduate?
Not as much now with the WIDA. I think the WIDA is a lot more rigorous than the
Okay.
one. I think, I don't have the number. I think last year we had maybe 12 students exit.
Okay. Yeah.
But WIDA is a lot more rigorous. It's a more rigorous test. It's a
Yeah.
lot more complicated, and it has layers to it that the test before it didn't have.
And you'd really have to start early on in order to be able to do that. You couldn't start in 10th grade and do that, right?
Here's a question that I have. Do you have students that graduate from Linden High School that are, let's say, on this baseline here, like year 3, and they haven't graduated out, but they were able to graduate high school? Is that quite a few, I'm guessing, based on the number you gave me of those who test out? Okay.
When we shared the WIDA test with teachers, because some of the teachers hadn't experienced just what the test actually looks like, they said, we'd like to give this to all kids just to see. If not,
that'd be interesting.
just because it's so rigorous with the academic language. Our ML students are held to that standard. We wonder, are there other, what would our population, what would that percentage be that would pass them?
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
And you've got students that come in probably sophomore year and they're testing year one, most likely. So just trying to get them to that place where they're able to graduate and be as proficient.
It's really difficult.
It's one of the greatest challenges of secondary education is the newcomer as a 16, 17-year-old and not having the runway and having a system that's set up for English speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, and then
Especially in high school.
there's diversity within those newcomers as well, in terms of their academic background and their language background. And so it does present challenges to schools.
I think we're working incredibly hard.
Yeah.
My office is a revolving door. Every day there's students in there and just kind of like taking a minute to take a deep breath and just like, you can do this. Remember that you can do this. And just, they take their 5 minutes and they gather themselves and they go back out there. It's just, it's very hard.
Well, thanks for being there
But
for them.
they have so much motivation, and teachers are great at just meeting them where they are. And
I'd say I've seen so much creativity by the teachers in the last couple of years, especially at the high school, trying to think about how we are going to do this heavy lift of the content at the high school level, and especially for our students that have just come in and brand new English language learners, how are we going to do both? Teach them algebra and teach them English. And we just, we have an extended day program that is funded by one of our grants that just started yesterday. We had 20 students from the Algebra 1 class that is being taught in bilingual. It's being taught Spanish and English.
Okay.
20 students show up after school for 2 hours to
Wow.
do extended math.
Wow.
So the students are ready
2
to
hours.
the challenge. Teachers are being really creative, and it's really inspiring.
How long is that grant good for?
It's part of our federal funding, so.
Okay.
You'll see.
Yeah.
I don't start that.
Please do.
Can I just switch gears? You know, my wondering, because there are actually public education, there are districts in Washington State that are immersion, Spanish immersion, all the way through K-12, right? That's not a lie. I actually read that somewhere.
No, they are. That's a preferred model, but it's also a really difficult model, and sometimes it's not what it appears to be. So it's not always the newcomers that end up in the immersion class.
A dual language class. Dual language is the preferred model.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean,
What's the
I'm just thinking if the focus was every kid is learning a second language from kindergarten, then you're leveling the playing field, right? Like, I mean, I made my girls take Spanish classes for years, and I have one that speaks Spanish, and the rest of us don't really. So, I mean, and language acquisition is so hard. So you think if you're starting from just a little kid, like the benefits of that being a thing, K through 12, I don't know. I guess you just hire a lot of, I don't know where I'm putting that, just throwing that out there.
Superintendent Reichdahl made a commitment by 2040 that every student in Washington would have a dual language program. Now that comes with a lot of funding. It was an election year, and we'll see how those things go. But the district has pursued that previously, and other districts have. It just is really challenging in a demographic circumstance that we're in. To be able to kind of create this 50-50 where you have kindergarten, 50% of the instruction is going to be in Spanish, 50's in English. You have native Spanish speakers in there, you have native English speakers in there, and they go through middle school, that way. And so when you have 3 elementary schools and you have, 15 multilingual learners at each of those grade levels in each school, and then you think about the staffing and going through. So it's a preferred model. Statistics will show it would result in the best outcomes for learners, both English is what you're talking about, English speakers and non-native English speakers. It's currently not a model that's supported financially for districts to operate. And so we use what's called a supportive mainstream model. And so we're working to invest in our teachers and our educators and supporting in those dynamic classrooms that learning be 100% accessible.
Just a ballpark number, what would be the cost to run something like that? The ideal model.
Well, partly would be the cost, but partly would be the availability of staffing. Of staffing at every grade level. And you can't just trade out your you need a bilingual staff at each of those grades in there. And so, like, I don't know if Burlington's still doing it or not through a certain grade, but
I think if some of their elementaries through 8th grade, I don't know about.
Yeah, like maybe one or two of the elementaries, and then I think some families can choose. They may have students go to some of those magnet schools. So I don't have a great number for you.
Just curious.
But it would be more the logistics that is the limiting part of it, and then getting the teaching degrees with bilingual employees. And that there are some efforts in the state to try to continue building that, because it's pretty clear statistical.
2040.
What's that?
2040.
By 2040. Yeah.
2040.
Yeah.
I would say slowly we have been hiring more bilingual educators and teachers, and so informally that does happen in classrooms. And
I would say maybe 15. When did we do the Circle Grant ELD cohorts? 15 years ago. You guys probably both involved in it.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 2007, 2008.
Some money came into the system to be able to train teachers. When you talked about having qualified educators, a lot of educators in Linden became qualified in ELD and in English language learners, TESOL, through some of these grant programs. Then got the teachers' endorsements, and so they're strewn across our system now. And that came, 2007, 2008. Right. It has been a while. You were involved? Yeah, both of you were. So, yeah.
I've got a couple of questions now that we're at that slide. Some of them were already answered. I had, how can parents help with the WIDA test? It looked like there are practice ones because I do have a kid that does the WIDA assessment. Let's see. Question is, all of the multilingual learners, do they that take the WIDA test, are they all an IEP? No. Okay.
yeah, those two are not, like, we have many students that are on IEPs that aren't English language learners, and I would say we work really hard to make sure that we're not misidentifying students that are English language learners as having needing an IEP or needing a.
Okay, so those two are separate. So do we have, because IEP is special education.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have that kind of funding for the ML, or it's just regular school?
Yeah, we don't have that same level of funding.
Not same level.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that is one of the challenges our teachers kind of surfaced. That's when I started. I think 2000, right before COVID, we started going around kind of saying that, we were putting an effort in this, and we had these resources. We had case managers for special ed students. We had, specialized teachers. We had individual education plans. Our multilingual learners would benefit from that same level of service. Those resources aren't there to do that.
Okay.
And so again, we're taking the approach that our first best teach meet the needs of all learners, and then we do have some supplemental supports. But the short answer is no, they're not the same level.
Thank you. I gotta commend all of the students that are taking the WIDA test because this is a great presentation. Thank you. I always enjoy all of the questions, what you guys present, and then what the multilingual students kind of go through. It's like taking the IELTS and TOEFL. If you guys are familiar with that, immigrants take that, like let's say if you have to work for a visa. Back when I was in high school, I think 3rd or 4th year, we only had until 10th. We didn't have 11th and 12th in the Philippines. So I think I was in 9th or 10th, and we were preparing to, my mom was like, okay, why don't, after high school, you go study in Canada. So it took the IELTS, same thing, it's, can only listen once, all of the 4, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and then they record. It gets, it's very high benchmark and standards, and listening to your practice test just kind of made me go back through that. Yeah. Yeah, and I took a lot of paid, what do you call that, training for that because of, how hard it was. And I can tell that the WIDA is definitely very, very rigorous just by looking at that practice test. So, yep. The only difference is they have a time limit. So yeah, that's the only difference. But yeah, as far as we were talking about the benefits of having another learned language, that's how my education was in the Philippines. So we always had 2 languages in the classroom, and I don't know if Ms. Cartagena can relate to that. Where were you educated? Here?
In Texas.
In Texas. Oh, okay. And you were also here, right? So you always had instruction in English.
Well, there is, back when I was in school, you had to do 2 years of secondary language. So I took sign language.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so anyhow, yeah, I just gotta say thank you for what you're doing. It's definitely a challenge.
Come back and,
Yeah.
share results and plans for next year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you both. Thank you, Melissa.
Sign language, like that. Oh, that kind of, okay. I was like, I only know A, B, C, that's
So,
it.
yeah. It's just interesting. Used to go to deaf socials.
All right, so now we are on to, let's see, legislative reports. Action items, are we good to continue on with our agenda, or, okay?
Sorry, can I motion a 5-minute break?
Okay, that's why I asked, okay.
Okay.
Motion for 5-minute break, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right,
No.
5-minute break. All right, we'll reconvene the meeting at, what is it, 8:29? So yeah, next is the action items. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent VanderYacht to read the cover sheet for the first resolution.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of background on this one, and I maybe spoken to a couple of you. I'll read the resolution, and then I do need to give some background information to the full board, which will impact kind of the steps that are taken going forward. So Resolution 0325, adoption of the capital facilities plan and authorization to request school impact fees is included in your packet for board consideration. Whatcom County and the City of Linden have requested that the district update its capital facilities plan to allow each jurisdiction to adopt it by reference. Also included in your packet is a draft of the 6-year capital facilities plan, which serves as a guide for planning capital projects and determining the district's eligibility for receiving school impact fees. Board approval of this resolution will result in the adoption of the capital facilities plan and authorize Superintendent VanderYacht to request the collection of impact fees. So here's the situation, is that in order to adopt a capital facilities plan and be referenced by the other entities, there are requirements, and one of the requirements is that there be a determination of non-significance related to the State Environmental Protection Act, SEPA. And so within SEPA, there's steps that an entity must take. And the Lindens, we missed a step, which was we needed to post. So we made a determination that there's non-significant impact, and then we must post that on the Department of Ecology website for 2 full weeks. And that step was missed. You know, we did a number of other steps, like letter to Lummi Nation, City of Linden, Nooksack Tribe, Whatcom County, advertised in an open newspaper. And so it recommended by our lawyers to make sure that we complete all of the steps, because we have to upload the checklist that says all of those steps were met. And so right now, those steps will be scheduled to be met on March, which is why we pushed it to February 21st place. Those steps will be met on March 3rd, which will then bring this capital facilities plan for approval to the March 6th board meeting.
Okay.
And so I believe on this meeting, there can be a motion, you have the draft of the capital facilities plan, there could be a motion to amend, that then could get second, that would lead to discussion and possibly amend the plan as it is. But ultimately, at the end of this action item, I've recommended to President Verberg that the appropriate step would be to make a motion to postpone approval of the capital facilities plan until the March 6th meeting. So, that help you, President Verberg?
Yes, it does.
To facilitate the,
Yeah, so a little change of plan. So I guess my only question, because I know we had a deadline to get this done, but of course you want, I mean, I could teach a class on SEPA.
Well, you should have taught it of me.
So SEPA is really important to make sure that we're in compliance with SEPA, but then you've got a competing compliance obligation for us to adopt this 6-year plan by a certain time, right?
We're good on that.
We're good on that.
We're
Okay.
good on that.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that we were all good there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So would the discussion mainly center around page 13, impact fees, prices, see if we're kind of all in accordance with that? Is that kind of, do we need to make a motion and second to put this on hold and then have that discussion, or how does that?
I think
proceed
right
that way?
now, I think the direction is to make a motion to postpone until.
So I'll make a motion to postpone this until we.
Well, pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
Because I would like to have a conversation about the impact fees.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that we can do that.
We can have discussion
Motion,
after we make a
second,
motion
discussion.
second.
We would
Correct.
do that in discussion of the motion to postpone. That's
You
appropriate.
could,
Yeah.
if somebody wants to make an amendment at the end of that discussion, then I think another motion could be made to amend. My recommendation was if somebody, my recommendation would be to maybe make a motion to amend in second, and then a discussion around that potentially, and then whether that passes or not, or whether it ends up that there's an amendment. Then at the end of that discussion, then somebody make a motion to postpone before approval. But then
Okay.
it could be amended at the next meeting too.
I will second his motion to postpone.
Okay.
No, no one's made a motion or anything yet.
I made a motion.
Oh,
You made a
did.
motion.
I made a
Yeah.
motion, she just seconded, so now we're in discussion.
Yes, so a motion's been made and seconded, discussion
to postpone
to postpone
to March 6th.
to March 6th.
Great, I'd like,
Because- Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'd like to turn our attention to page 13 where we can have a discussion on impact fees and prices, and then
I think that's fine.
continue on from there, so.
13 of the draft thing. Okay.
Yes, page 30 in our packet.
No, no.
So-
30, okay.
Were you going to make some comments?
No, I was just setting the stage.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
thank
we're
you.
setting the stage.
So here's my progression of thought on impact fees. When the topic first came up, however long ago it was, my initial thought, without spending a lot of time analyzing or thinking, was the juice isn't worth the squeeze. There's just not enough money there. It's not going to build a new high school. It's not going to expand an elementary school. I don't think it's worthwhile placing that burden on growth. Then subsequent to that, we had a fairly lengthy conversation, the superintendent and I. I read through the capital facilities plan a couple of times, spent a good deal of time on the calculation, the spreadsheet, and just sort of making sure I understood how this math all worked. And came to the conclusion that I was generally in favor of impact fees, though I had as yet not sort of thought in my brain what the fee should be. Then we had a meeting with the city where we sort of got a bit of understanding of sort of the historical thought, what previous city councilors had thought, and some of those folks had they had some knowledge because they had served on the school board and they knew people, and we had reference to a Tribune article, I think, or something. And so that was very helpful. And I'm actually glad that we're delaying because I'm very conflicted. I had a conversation yesterday with a gal who needed help paying her rent. She'd lost her job in January. She now has a job, but she went a full month not able to pay her rent, asking for help from my organization, which we do a bit of that. And what I do, just because I don't know any better, is I call landlords, and I've done this a number of times, and I call utility companies to find out. I've spent more time than in the last 6 months than the whole rest of the time I've lived in Whatcom County at City Hall talking to the people that process utility bills about, And so I had this interesting conversation with the landlord about the cost of rent and how most landlords are expecting to raise rent because of inflation, $150, $200 a month. And I just came to I'm conflicted because I just am not convinced that now is the right time to place more burden on homeowners and apartment owners, because that's who will pay these impact fees. Yes, I understand that the developer pays that fee down at the city hall when they buy a building permit, but it is the renters and the homeowners who are going to pay these fees. And I'm really concerned about the state of the economy, the inflation, and all those other things. And so I'm not suggesting right here that we set these to zero. I just would like the rest of the board to really, really think hard about this.
Well, and I have, and that's why I was like, well, we came up with 75 for one and 25 for the other. So initially I was like, well, why don't we set them both at 25? I would go low.
Mm-hmm.
That would appease my conscience more than, I still think they're a good idea, and I agree with you. I think that inflation has not been kind to a lot of people, and so I still think they're a good idea, but my hope was, well, maybe we break them down to whatever the lowest, and I think we can come up with our own percentage, right, Superintendent VanderYacht?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the ones that were offered were the 25, 50, 75, and so I was like, well, what about 25? But still 10 grand, so another 25, 50% off that, because that was the one at 75. I don't know, it would be significant, I think, but so that's where I was at. So I agree with you, but I don't think it should be zero necessarily, but I think, and then the other question was, could it be something that, if this is like a 6-year thing, could it go up? Like, could we set that, like, a percentage increase for every year, or?
When we do the interlocal agreement with the city, there is a space in there to have some discussion about how some natural escalations.
Mm-hmm.
But if that doesn't happen, the district could come back and reset the fees through the adoption of an updated 6-year capital facilities plan.
Is there,
Is the way I understand it.
is there any requirement that, let's say, once you set that percentage, you have to wait, let's say, 4 years, 3 years, 5 years, or no?
I do not believe so. Okay. It is, we began this work quite some time ago, and it is quite expensive to do the analysis that results in how many students are generated out of each unit, and so it's not a small.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to redo that whole analysis.
Yes,
right.
To change the fee structure, you'd have to go back and redo
Same process.
the analysis. And there's some requirements within that analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to say. I'm not asking anybody to make a decision tonight. I'm not going to even propose a motion to amend it. That story I related is not the only story. I have a stack from when I was sick. I have a stack of community assistance requests. 50% of them are people asking for help with rent. And that is a net downstream impact of this will impact that. It won't impact it tomorrow, right? But so I'm just so worried about what that's going to do to families, and our taxes just keep going up and up and up. Property taxes. This amounts to a property tax. It's not a property tax I'm going to pay unless I buy a new house, which I'm probably not going to do. I'll probably die in the house I live in now if I have anything to say about it. My wife doesn't agree, but
Mine either.
that's what I wanted to say, and we'll come back, in a couple of weeks and talk more about it. But I'm just really nervous about this. I know the district needs the money. I absolutely know the district needs the money, and Danny and I have had chats about capital levies and bonds, and I know the district needs the money, but I mean, for goodness sake, our debt to GDP ratio right now is 120 odd % in this country, and that the piper has to be paid on that. And anyway, I'll shut up now about it. Sorry, I'm just really nervous about it. I'm conflicted on the topic. So beyond that, I love the capital facilities plan. However, I think it's a great plan.
So I'll bounce off that. Because I want to get your brain. I don't want to be so cold-hearted and say I'd prefer to have 14,000 as every single unit, which part of me would. But is it? What about the single house number that we came up with? That 6,992. Does that seem? Because when you're talking about, oftentimes, one of my hobbies is looking at housing. Interestingly enough, I do a lot of housing help on the side for funsies. So when you're talking a lot of times about housing, you're most likely talking about multi-family units, apartment complexes, duplexes, multiplex, etc. Would you be in favor of keeping that 6,992 single and dropping down that 10,555 to something more manageable? I mean, just help me to get more of a concrete.
I certainly think if you look at what an impact fee is, which is a way to collect revenue to offset the impact of new students in the district, the student generation rate is very similar between a single-family residence 3+ and a multifamily 2+. That number is, just a minute, what is it, 235 versus 196. It's very close, right? It's roughly, every 4 apartments.
Under state school construction, that section?
Yeah, exactly. It's repeated several times here, but it's right kind of in the center. 0.235, 0.196. These numbers are very, very similar for elementary, middle, and high school. If that's true, it means that an apartment, a single apartment of 2 bedrooms or more, has the same impact as a single-family residence on the school district. So from that perspective alone, I would say that was the reason I was originally arguing for these two numbers, never mind the percentage, but these two numbers being pretty close to the same.
Okay.
Because if you think philosophically, what we're doing is we're trying to collect fees to offset the impact of those new students that are coming in the district. And since the student generation rate is about the same. Now, the argument against that is the fact that the assessed value of a home is $5.1 million versus $2.1 million, which means that they pay much less property tax, right? But that property tax they pay and an EP&O levy, and then of course those two lines on your property tax statement, they're not for new students. They're for existing students, right? The impact fee is to account for the fact that there's new students that come into the district. So from a philosophical perspective, that's why I was arguing kind of for those numbers to be the same. But that said, you're right. I think that the homeowner, the family that buys the 3-bedroom house, is much more likely going to be able to afford a $7,000 line item on a. Right, I 100% agree with you. But that $10,000 is going to be passed right on to a renter.
Yeah, I'm building a fourplex. You know, hypothetically, if I'm building that's an extra $42,000 that I incur as debt that I'm going to pass off to.
Right, that your renter's going to pay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get that.
So.
I'm okay with what,
go ahead.
I'm okay with what's presented. I mean, we're kind of all in the same boat. Personally speaking, the culture shock of coming here to the U.S., because we don't, as a culture, we don't do loans, and everything here is loans. And we're blueberry farmers. We don't, get money when we want it. We get it in chunks, in time increments. We don't have any control how much we get. We don't have any control when we get it. So we were basically very close to coming on the streets, I guess. that's just the farmer's life it is here. And despite all of that, I would say I would vote the same way if I was, presented, let's say, a bond for the school. So just for this instance of the role that I have here on the school board, I would focus on Linden and Linden schools. And because of that, like I said, personally speaking, financial standpoint wise, we can't afford any taxes. Not that me saying we'll stop any of that happening, because we've got a lot of legislation coming down from Olympia for more taxes. But like I said, just for this topic here, I'm okay with what's presented. Again, which might change, not change, we'll see. That's the board's decision. But since we are in a discussion, that would be my viewpoint.
Yeah, I'm like Director Alza. I'm conflicted on this, honestly, because I hear from developers, right, and your stories a bit, because it's true. You're going to assess a fee, but just like Director Martinez said, it will get passed on to renters, and renters, typically are ones that tend to be in lower income categories, and that's something that I think it's good. I agree. I think it's good that I'm getting a little more time to think about it. And so between now and when we vote on this again, I think that's a good thing. So.
And that's next meeting, is it?
It'll be on the 6th.
Okay, next meeting. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to throw some numbers just for you guys to think on.
Sure.
I think that I'd be okay with so the fee is calculated is without a discount is $9,000 for single family, $9,323. I think if we went even slightly lower at less than $3,000 from that, $6,323, which amounts to just about 25% of a discount. I think that would be fine, and we could do double that for the multifamily. So from that $14,073, remove $6,000, which ends up being a 42% reduction, to bring it down to $8,073. So it's a little bit less than what we put for the multifamily to start with, but I still think we need to put more for multifamily because that's what's going to be generated more. And I think that Linden does need the revenue, and that's kind of the hard trade-off that we have to. I'd rather pay taxes for locally funded things that need to happen. And
what was so the number of units built, multifamily units, was 342. This is on page 34 of the packet. Over the time of analysis, and 356 for single family homes, most of which were 3 bedrooms or more.
345 of them were 3 bedrooms.
Right, exactly. So you're looking at about the equal number. Now, if that trend stays the same, I don't know. Do you happen to know that breakdown for Pepin Creek?
It's a lot of multifamily, and there is a sizable portion for single family home. I've got the
You have those,
The big
Yeah,
numbers, yeah.
and so that's where my mind is at.
And it may
Just
change.
It could
It
change.
may
that's the problem,
change.
right? Yeah. they-
pending impact fees, right,
Right.
or whatever. But that's.
But it's happening.
well, I don't think, look, just
Yeah.
so we're clear, I don't
Yeah, no, I
think an
know.
impact fee is gonna stop people from building a house. I really don't. But I do think it's gonna have an impact on those families who move into those apartments. And that's the root of my concern.
I agree. I think,
People are gonna build houses and they're gonna build apartments because we're growing.
and at those numbers that I presented, I think there's a $1,750 difference. So it's not the same, but it's closer than where they're currently at. So
Just to clarify, so the page 13, we're looking at the fee schedule. When we say that the impact fee per multifamily dwelling unit, 2 bedrooms or more, so let's say there's an apartment with 10 units. Oh, sorry, did I say?
No, you're right,
Yeah, right,
multifamily,
okay.
two is right.
Okay, so if there are 10 units in that apartment, this 10,555, let's just say we pass it that way, that gets assessed to each
Yeah.
of the unit, not as a whole.
Correct.
Okay,
As long as there are 2 bedrooms or more.
okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
If there's 2
per
apartments
unit.
with 2 bedrooms and 8 with only 1 bedroom, then it's only, it
Right.
would be only 20 grand, right?
So here's another thought that I hadn't even considered. Where Tractor Supply is, they have all those apartments that are listed right there. Some of those are singles. So hypothetically, if there were single units, let's say there's 25 generated in a building project. It's a multifamily dwelling, but they're all 25 are single bedrooms. We'd get $0 for that. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Is that something that we would consider imposing an impact fee? Because I don't understand the logic.
On a one-bedroom?
On a one bedroom. I don't understand the logic between why would we do 2 bedrooms but not 1 bedroom?
We're not
Probably
allowed,
because more kids.
Yeah, because
we're not allowed to, is it in here, multifamily?
I think the rationale is likely a 1 bedroom, is it gonna have kids in it?
The analysis
Right.
was done
Unless
with
you're in
how many
Asia.
students, which
Right.
creates that multiplier, and then that takes the, those discounts of them paying property tax for 10 years, right? So that gets subtracted, and then
Oh, yeah.
what's the other, and then the SCAP money gets
SCAP money.
subtracted, and we end up not having anything there where we're allowed to collect
Yeah,
impact
I
fees.
see.
And-
So that
Yeah.
single, like on page 35, that single family 2 or less, where the number, the initial number is at 4,739 for permanent facility cost, less the tax payment, the CFA credit.
Yeah, and if you look at the student generation rate,
Yeah.
is .091
Right.
for single-family residence, 2 or less, and it's 0 for middle and high school. So that generation rate creates this much lower value.
Yeah.
They still pay the same property tax,
Right.
so then you end up with that negative 5,000, which is why it ends up at 0, which I think is
Yeah.
the same
That
analysis
makes
that
sense.
comes
Okay.
into place for the
That's right.
1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, thank you.
It's not on the page, but I assume that
Yeah,
analysis.
think you're right.
it didn't create any students, and then
Right.
Yeah.
and then had a negative number.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this last meeting is I think this is the wrestle, right? You guys are mucking around in what the wrestle is. We heard from some voters who did not support the bond, because of the same argument we're
Right.
making, who was making the argument of, let's move that burden a little bit to people who are coming in, who are currently not living in our in here, and help offset some of the costs that are created from new homes. And so, trying to wrestle with that and representing the citizens, we hear both.
Yeah.
And so you're wrestling with the right thing, and hopefully, voters give you credit for that wrestling around and what decision is made. And so
And
now
that-
we have another couple weeks.
That is something I've thought a lot about as well, is that it feels like there's a bullet list of things that the voter says, that a lot of voters say, well, I'm voting against the bond because of there's boys going in girls' bathrooms, and because the learning loss during COVID, and what are you doing about that? I'm just going down the list of that email that we got, right? And so there's those things, and then there's impact fees. So the other part of me says, okay, fine, we'll do all those things, and a lot of that stuff we're really working on. We're really working on that stuff, the transgender issue that we've talked about, and all these other issues. So we're working on that. So great, we passed impact fees. We've hit all your bulleted items. can we get a new high school now? And I wonder to myself, that's not the reason to do this, but it sort of feels like somebody's telling us that's the reason to do it. Not you, but some voters, right?
The people I called said that.
Yeah.
You know, that is a part of the input that we received. We've been able to collect information from two pretty big elections. And that's one of them.
Yeah.
I think that if we're able to collect impact fees and be somewhat understanding in terms of what we're going to collect, it does at least have good favor for both sides. Number one, we're not gouging people and charging them $14,073 for every single unit that they build in the future. But we are looking at the future and generating revenue for student impacts.
Did you say that you have somewhere this breakdown for Pepin Creek? Did you say you have that somewhere? The number of multifamily versus 3-bedroom houses?
I do.
Versus...
Yeah, that was from it's on the city website.
I'm sure it is.
But
yeah.
it's also I think I got a copy when we had our city.
I can give them to you.
Well, would you take those numbers, multiply them by the figures that you came up with, and tell us what the total would be if that's what actually gets built?
Yes.
Would you do that?
That'd be
You
great.
mean as far as
How much
income?
revenue?
Yeah, revenue.
Because that's going to help us understand if the juice is worth the squeeze, right? If that's what we build, if we build 1,200 or 1,400
That's fair.
units, and at your calculated numbers there, what
Minus
does that come up to?
3,000 minus 6,000. It's a very generic.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see what that comes out to.
Yeah.
And if you know those numbers, and
Yeah.
you've written your numbers down, I'll let
Describe
you
the
do that.
boundary of Pepin Creek too, because I know that the property sold around Linden Academy, and that's going to be developed. Are you including that in the calculation, or is there a set boundary of the Pepin Creek?
You're talking about that space right next to Linden Academy, right?
Yeah, in the back and around the back. That's probably the first space that's going to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so I don't know if it's just describe the boundary too.
There are farms being sold that are, by the Pepin Creek development. There were two, I think, from the last meetings that we have that we annexed, basically. So, because I think that's unincorporated, that's something area. So, yeah, just keep in mind that that map, that numbers may change.
Well, of course, we don't know. We just have to, but we should do some analysis and come to an understanding of, okay, if we do this, this is the money we're going to generate. And then, frankly, we should spend some time thinking about, well, what are we going to do with that money then? What are our plans for that money, right? Because as you and I chatted the other day, you asked me the question, well, what do you think the smart thing to do is? And I said, well, the smart thing to do is to do something. We should do something. And so I think that if we are going to move forward, I want to just think about that.
Well, and it gives us as well credibility for when we propose a bond or if we propose a big levy.
Right.
And we could say, well, we've also thought about offsetting the cost with X, Y, and Z impact fees. So.
Yeah.
And I also want to note, that getting all this information costs a lot of money too. And so I don't want it to, generate nothing.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I would argue that you're right. But doing impact fees just so that we didn't waste the money isn't necessarily the right reason to do it. You know what I mean?
No, but it's the same with putting the bond on there, when I was like, no, but then it costs money to put that bond, on the ballot, right? Everything that we do costs money, and it's still taxpayer dollars the way I look at it.
Right, no, I agree. I'm just saying that, we didn't put the bond on the ballot because it cost us money to do it. You get what I'm saying?
No, I'm just saying that's how I think about the decisions that I'm making, that everything costs money, and I want to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars, even these decisions, right? I'm with you. I feel bad for people that are really struggling, because we know that there's insane amount of people really struggling. Anyway, I'm just talking to you about my thought process.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just...
It was part of the questioning that with the city on both meetings was that, I was kind kind of wrestling around. I've always been a proponent for more affordable homes in Linden as a public educator, but we're not a community that is very attractive to affordable homes. And so we may think by not passing impact fees, we're somehow going to make Linden more affordable. And that may be the case to a certain extent, but that's also going to create then a burden on the schools. And so this is a tough
trade-off.
This is a tough trade-off.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's particularly true on single-family residents. I'm not entirely sure it's true on multifamily residents, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
The other thing I want to share is you brought up capital. We've shared an action plan. Maybe I'll share it again. There are things in motion, and so that first community solutions meeting is Monday night, 11 individuals. So make sure you go back and look at that. And I know we missed one superintendent update, but I'm just making sure that this is all part of a larger plan.
Right.
That will come before the board in terms of processing some of those. What are we going to do? So there's
Is that the
some
meeting
work
invite
happening
that
right
you sent to us, right?
now. That's a different one. That's
Different
the long-term capital facilities
Long-term,
plan.
okay. So,
That one's
not
March
speaking
4th.
for me, but just in case somebody wants to attend the one that you're talking about Monday, right? Can we? Again, not talking
I
for
wouldn't
myself.
have it changes
don't
the
want a quorum.
dynamic a little bit when you have
Yeah.
a board director there. But
There's only two there.
yeah,
Right.
I mean,
There's
you could,
already,
but
are there any board directors at that meeting
not that
Monday?
one, no.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, like,
Okay.
if maybe one or two wants to, again, not asking for myself,
What
but
would
just
be
in
the
case.
what would be the benefit to not having a board director there? I'm just because you said it changes the dynamic of
It can change it. It can change the dynamic a little bit for people speaking openly and wanting to. Well, what do you think? And and David and CJ were really good about that. They just kind of so that when the presentation came, it was from a community citizens group that was presenting. So
I would say if there's any, and I know you guys know this, but I'm saying this just because I have to. I think if any of us do decide to go to any of those meetings, we have to let people talk. Just because we're sitting board directors doesn't mean that we
Just to listen.
we override
Yep.
people's discussions.
Absolutely.
I think it would be really useful to I like that plan that you've come up with that group, and I think it would be useful to let that group of people meet independent of us. I think there's benefit in that for exactly the reason that you mentioned. And I'm excited to hear what that group proposes, because you've got some very interesting individuals on that team, so I think I'm excited to hear what that group puts forth. And I think we've got a lot of interesting options too around capital facilities and what we decide to do. So, yeah. Anyway.
Great. Just, yeah, so if there's no more, quick question on process. Not that I want to put off the decision on impact fees any longer, because I do think we need to. Do we have to vote at March 6th on the impact fees? Let's say we got there and it was just a tough decision and we need a little extra time.
no, it would not be a requirement.
Okay, all right.
But we
That
do need to
being said,
vote on the motion that's on the table.
Yeah, we have to vote on
I would encourage my fellow board directors to please have a decision by then.
Okay.
I think we
No,
can.
fair enough.
I think we can, and regardless of the numbers that are presented, I think that we should. I think the main thing is we're kind of dabbling over what number to put for this, rather than if we should or should not do this. There might be a little bit of that. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but
Well, I'm definitely wrestling with should or should not. I'm definitely wrestling that. But I'm also wrestling with what I think the number should be if I land on the side of, if I go back to being on the, and I'm like John Kerry. I was against it before I was for it, before I was against it.
2004. All right.
can we vote?
All right, so we had a motion, we had a second, we had our discussions.
Student advisory.
Student advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye. To table? Okay.
Postpone.
Postpone? All.
Do I get to go home now?
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The decision to kick it to the March 6th meeting carries, voice vote. All right, if there are no more agenda items, this meeting is adjourned.